Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on what part of the world that you're in. My name is Leon Morales. I'm the leader here that runs the operations here at DNA Behavior, and I'm proud to introduce two important people. One is the chairman, Hugh Massey, who I work with daily, and the second guest is Philip Campbell, all the way from Australia, 6:30 in the morning for Philip. We're very happy to have him here. But we're pretty excited about this particular webinar because it really is around sort of how the brain works, and it really coincides with the work that we do at DNA Behavior. So Hugh and I were pretty excited when Philip agreed to be on the webinar, and I know we had a little challenge to get us started back from January, but we're excited to have you here, Philip, and I know that people that registered from the original session are here today, so we're excited to have you here. And with that, I will turn it over to Hugh so we can do a little bit deeper dive in what we're going to be exploring today with Philip. And I also want to let everyone know that it's going to be an interactive presentation. So there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to enter any questions in there. I'll monitor that and ask questions of Philip. And then I think he has a couple of exercises also that he wants us to go through where we use the chat function. So with that, I'll turn it over to Hugh.
Thank you, Leon, and welcome, Philip. I'm delighted to be part of this webinar and conversation today with Philip, and this is really something that Philip and I have been working on for quite a while in terms of how we collaborate, and both of us as Australians, who and I live, me living in America now, although originally from Sydney, and Philip living in Sydney and doing a lot of work in America and around the world, and it's amazing how we've done such deep work on how the brain ticks and DNA behavior, our work around the hard wiring and its influence on behaviors, and then Philip's going to get in a lot deeper on our subconscious thinking and other areas of the brain. And I know all of you today as leaders and anybody else that is going to listen to this presentation in the hours, days, and years to come are all concerned about focus. And the distractions in the workplace are huge. And I think we all know that if we're going to outperform, we have to be more focused. And it's interesting, I was introduced to Philip about 3 years ago by a mutual friend of ours, an entrepreneur, Peter Harper, who's also Australian, living here in the United States, and he was doing some coaching work with Philip and suggested that the two of us connect and collaborate, and we did that. And Peter and I are actually pretty similar people in terms of DNA style and also in our business career and training. So we've got some natural level of focus, but we're far from perfect. And what I've experienced with Philip is, for me being an entrepreneur and Peter, and there's some others that we know that have been experiencing Philip's work, that it's easy to get distracted on a task. And just like this afternoon, an hour ago, I was getting ready for this presentation. I thought I'm going to be cool, calm, and collected, not stressed, ready to bring my best energy. But of course, did I get distracted on the way through and do 4 other tasks in the middle of it? Yes, I did. And I think that's just a minute example of what we're talking about. But as entrepreneurs, as leaders, we get into a million things during the day, and perhaps we shouldn't be getting into a million things during the day, and we should be far more structured in our thinking and in our process to how we approach the work, because if we can do that, we're going to be far more effective. So I'm going to hand the mic now to Philip to let him share his work, and just to credentialize Philip a little bit. He's been working with the leaders of major corporations around the world at the top end on again being able to tap into their brain properly to be more effective. So over to you, Philip.
Okay, thanks, Hugh, and hello, Hugh and Leon, and hello to the webinar colleagues that are joining us. I'm looking forward to doing this. So, Hugh, just to put a little quick framework around it, I'll give a bit of background Then to give some context, I'll just talk a little bit about the neuroscience and cognitive science around the brain, and then we'll do the deeper dive into the focused thinking. And thank you for sharing your experience this morning. You'll be pleased to know that you're not Robinson Crusoe. About 90% of the people we work with do that. And then, very importantly, we'll give you an experience of focused thinking and how it impacts both your productivity, your leadership capability, and how it impacts profits. And then we'll do a wrap up at the end there. So that's going to be the game plan for today. So let me jump into a little bit of the background and context. So I did a Master of Cognitive Science, which is the way the brain and mind works. And we work, as Hugh was saying, we work with everybody from entrepreneurs to scale-ups, fast-growing mid-sized companies, all the way up to the corporates, where in New York we work with the Boston Consulting Group, Bank of America, Lowe's Corporation, and also Westfield, who both properties both in Australia and the USA and Europe. And we work across USA, Europe, and Australia. So I get the pleasure to talk with a variety of people, and I really enjoy helping them understand their brain and how they can get more productivity and profit by improving it. So Hugh, was interesting. The concept that we're looking at here is, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were a bit worried about their career and where they were going. And I said, well, you've got to realize that your brain is a happy accident. And they didn't know whether to smile at me or scowl at me from there. And they would say, what do you mean your brain's a happy accident? And I went on to explain that the brain you have in your late teens, early 20s is kind of the way that it works at the subconscious level for the rest of your career. Obviously, it changes at the conscious level with what you learn. But interestingly enough, I went on to explain to them that the hobbies, the activities, the games you play growing up as a child drive your subconscious processing. And focused thinking is one of those, and there's another 9 of them. So if you want to change your focused thinking or any of the other 9, you literally need to rewire, redesign, and recode your brain so that those subconscious automatic information process habits work a whole lot better. So she felt a lot better to understand what we were talking about from that perspective here. So let me have a look and give you a bit of the background. So the conscious mind, we do an analogy between the iceberg and the brain. And Hugh, so how much of the iceberg do you think sits above the water there?
Well, if I'm looking at it, I think it's about 13% on above the water and 87% below, or just for simplicity, 10 and 90.
Exactly. That's what the research shows there. And so from a brain point of view, your conscious mind is what you are aware of. And it's language-based, and we process information serially, like one word after another, one sentence after another, one paragraph after another. And most people are familiar with George Miller's research that showed that the short-term memory can handle about 7 plus or minus 2 pieces of information there. So that's our conscious mind processing. Now, as you were saying, about 90% of an iceberg is under the water level. And it's the same with the way your brain processes information. So 90% of what you do is a subconscious brain habit. In other words, it's been done over and over again, so it's automated, and your conscious brain doesn't even have to think about it. So think about how you drive a car. You can be driving a car for 10 miles, all of a sudden, and in deep thought, and all of a sudden you snap out of it and you go, who was driving the car the last 10 miles? So I think most people have had that experience there. Now, the thing about subconscious thinking habits is that they're non-verbal. So the language of the subconscious is spatial and pictorial diagrams, and it's parallel processing. And some research I saw recently said that the subconscious brain can handle millions of bits of data per second. So it's a totally different brain system to the conscious one. And so what we're talking about here is the automated, it's down in the limbic system, and you do it without even thinking about it or without even being aware of it. As I said, driving a car is one example, but there's other examples that I'll go through there as well. So here, as we discussed earlier, the main focus of today is going to be on the focused thinking, and thank you for sharing your thoughts there earlier. A lot of people think the way to be really productive is to be multitasking. I have to tell you, that's about the worst thing you can do, because you lose, the brain doesn't transfer instantly. It has to connect, reconnect, connect, reconnect, etc. And the reality is that it's not the best way to get the productivity. And almost business owners or entrepreneurs or people that are in the corporate world, their thinking habits revolve around these 4 key pillars. So controlling attention, what are your key priorities for today, the week, the month? And what's your ability to stay focused on them? So as I say to people, is your brain controlling your attention, or is whatever distracts you, whether it be internal or external, dragging you away from your key priorities? Then the second pillar is complex problem solving or complex opportunity solving. And I find that most executives and business leaders spend a huge amount of time in this area. But if any one of those 3 subconscious thinking habits aren't effective and efficient, it slows down both the process and the quality of the outcome. And then once you've worked out what you want to do, jumping into the strategy, planning, and execution. And unfortunately, a lot of people get into what I call ad hoc planning and execution, go down the wrong track, and do lots of rework. So getting those 3 in balance is extremely important. And as we would all know, and as you've just said, Hugh, unless we get the social leadership side of things, so that ability to build rapport, to empathize, be environmentally aware, then we're not going to get the people coming with us.
Yeah, and I think, Philip, probably good for me to interject here. There's 10 key aspects here of our thinking that we all need to develop. And I think you mentioned the word integration there. At the end of the day, the goal is for all of us to perform strongly on all 10 here. And from a DNA behavior perspective, and the way we've approached things, with people is everyone is going to have some strengths across these 10 areas and are going to have some natural struggles. Some people will be born to be naturally more focused, and in the DNA system, that's going to be the more reserved, planned type people, the reflective thinker. For the unique style or a strategist possibly will be stronger at focused thinking, whereas we're going to have others that are very creative, very adaptable in their thinking, and they'll be strong there, but maybe not as strong with focus or analysis in other areas. But even for me, and I used the story at the start about the fact that I got distracted, on the way to the call today, and part of me being focused was the fact that I was getting myself ready for an hour beforehand. And I've had training on all of this from Philip as well. So I know my performance has substantially increased in the last 6 months since I went through the very in-depth training with Philip, although I've been working with him before that. But even then, for the best of us who are highly aware of ourselves and getting distracted, we can still get distracted. But I think the thing is the more you're aware of your patterns with this, you can bring yourself back into line. And this is, that's what's, I think, very important about this. And it all does, at the end of the day, it starts with the focused thinking. And, we all start life with a different dosage of it. But it doesn't mean, even for the best of us, we can't learn to be better. And for those where it's not as natural, you can still learn it.
Absolutely, Hugh. And of the people we've tested, about 90% starting point is low to moderate focused thinking. So,
yeah, particularly with the business owners and the leaders, because often they're very conceptual and there's lots of things for them to be doing and thinking about. It's easy to lose track. And I think there's a word, Philip, that we talked about it before the start of the call today, and that's stress. And I think, why have we got so many stressed out leaders and stressed out employees is because part of it is they don't know how to focus themselves and get done what needs to be done in an effective way.
Absolutely. And the really important point that you brought out, and thanks for making it, Hugh, was when somebody has low or moderate focus, their brain's being distracted by interruptions and they're not even consciously aware of it. So until you become consciously aware you're being distracted, you can't do anything about it. So the fact that you're consciously aware tells me that you've really consolidated that, and you go, okay, I need to bring it back, because you can only make that decision once you've got the awareness of it. So that was a nice example. Thanks for that, Hugh. Okay, let's move on. So in a moment, I'm going to show you something in terms of like a personalized brain manual, but I just want to share a story first, Hugh, with you and your colleagues. So I was at a CFO conference presenting, and I needed a volunteer from the audience, and so one of the CFOs came up, a bit of a robust sort of a character, and I said, okay, you're in finance, so you understand assets. And he said, oh, absolutely. And I said, so would you agree that your brain is your most important asset? He said, of course, Philip. I said, okay, can you tell me how your brain works? Crickets, nothing, black face. And then in a moment of humor, he says, well, by the looks of it, very poorly, Philip. But like most people, he had no idea how his brain works. And then I said, and tell me, how were you taught to think and how to learn? And he goes, well, I wasn't. It just happened ad hoc, sort of what I did at school and university. And having a bit of fun, so I summed up. So what I've heard is your brain's your most important asset, but you don't know how it works, and nobody's taught you how to use it properly. Fortunately, he laughed because he's a big guy there, Hugh. But most people are in that same situation. So one thing I want people to get out of this is to have a better understanding of how their brain works, and through the neuroscience research, how you can tap into neuroplasticity to actually proactively change the way your brain works. So let me just run through a bit of background, and you've had some experience with this, so feel free to share some of your experiences as well. So I'm going to show you a graph in a moment, and it works on this grid. So as you can see on the left axis, you've got the quality of thinking, and on the bottom axis, the horizontal, you've got the speed of information processing. So the sweet spot, as we always know, is the top right-hand corner, where you high quality thinking, you can do it quickly. Moderate means you've still got high quality of thinking, but it just takes you longer relative to somebody that's here. So if you're analyzing a lot of data, you'll get there in the end, but you'll be somewhat behind the person that's optimum. And if you're red, not only will you be much slower, but the quality of your insights and analysis will be lower. And in overdeveloped areas, it doesn't tend to happen in analytical thinking, but in operational thinking, when somebody's overdeveloped, they're too hands-on, and their brain doesn't know how to make that transition from working in the business to working horizontally and on the business there. So I just want people to keep that in mind, Hugh. And what we're showing people is when we do the assessment, they literally get their own personal brain manual. And it looks something like this. So the first one we're going to be talking about is the controlling attention and the focused thinking. I'll come back to that because we're going to do it in more detail. But Hugh, as you and I were talking about on a number of occasions, one of the big areas is around how do you strategically think through things? How does your brain plan things? How do you then communicate and delegate things? And the operational thinking makes a person the go-to person. And that's how they get promoted early in their career. But that becomes a liability when you look to move high, because you still want to get down into the detail and the operation and the weeds. So we have to move up the strategic thinking and abstract thinking capability to counterbalance that. So Hugh, I don't know if you've got anything to share on some of your experience with this.
Yeah, I think that, what we're saying here is that someone who's an operational thinker could be extremely good at getting the tasks done. They're a very reliable individual. Their IQ is high, but once you then move them up the ladder and they've got to take responsibility for other people, for solving problems that they've never seen before, dealing with people, that's when I think that the operational thinking becomes a problem. And it might be that for some people, they're best staying in that operational type role where they are more of a doer and they're into delivery, and it's somebody else as well. And I think that, this is also got what we're talking about here has got a role in who does get promoted to leadership, or if they get promoted, how do they need to modify their behavior to succeed, and in what areas? And I think what we're really saying there, Philip, is if someone's going to succeed as a leader, they've got to bring back their operational thinking down some notches and allow, say, the strategic thinking to grow and to get a better balance in all 10 of these areas.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. I've had people that I've worked with have said, I've been told I need to be more strategic, Philip. But if I already knew how to do that, don't you think I'd be doing it? So it's a real source of frustration. People know what they need to do with the conscious mind, but their brain's not wired to do it easily and effectively. So our job is to turn their happy accidental brain into an ideal brain by redesigning it purposefully to have the brain that they need to be that senior executive or the business owner. Because as you were saying, if they're stuck in that operational thinking, it makes it difficult. And it also has big implications for business, particularly mid-sized businesses as well. Most people have heard of the Peter principle, where somebody gets promoted to one level above their level of competency. It's not their subject matter expertise that brings them undone. It's their ability to make that transition from working in the business to on the business. So somebody like this, which is way down in the red, you'd be borderline as to, if you promoted them, are you going to put them into the Peter principle, which has a large cost, because it's very hard to demote somebody. They're probably going to leave. You might have leaves a loyal worker with a lot of corporate knowledge. So it's really important. And again, with business owners, I can't stress enough, when you're doing your succession planning, have a look under the bonnet in terms of their subconscious thinking habits and who's best equipped to make the transition. And it usually helps to get it up to be as optimal level, because they're going to be looking after your long life term of hard work to build a business to the level it is. So there are a couple of important issues you raised here.
Yeah, I think that, if you start at the top on the focused thinking, I think we've all worked with a leader at some point in our career who's an extremely distracted person, and they are scattergun, they are all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's an extremely hard person to work for. They might have some great ideas or a great strategy there, but they don't know how to also turn that into execution and get everybody to follow them, because they're so scattered. And you sort of get one person one day and another person another day, and it's all over the place. And that's a very difficult thing to as far as leadership's concerned, because they're not going to be a good leader, even if they've got some good raw material elsewhere, until they get that sorted out.
Yeah.
But I think, Philip, I'll let you tell the rest of the story of, okay, where do we start with someone to get them developed as a leader?
So we start with the focus thinking, because I said most people have them on that. And just you raise an interesting point. We had one executive we were working with, who was red on focus thinking, which means they're very low on it. And I'll give people the opportunity to assess 10 dimensions or symptoms of lower focus thinking. We can have a bit of fun with that later. But one of their key symptoms was they always left everything to the last moment. And the problem then is it's too late to delegate effectively.
Yep.
So they have to do the hero hours. And by the way, your team members are getting really annoyed at this. They're going, Mary or Bill, why didn't you let us in on this earlier? I have expertise. I could have helped you. And they said, I had so much on, I just wasn't able to brief you early enough. And this happened time after time after time. When we work with them, the team members came up to me afterwards and said, what have you done? I said, well, I don't know, tell me. They said, what's going on? And they said, now they delegate early, they brief us early, and they're playing the conductor of the orchestra, and we're being personally developed. Because if you're not developing your people, you're going to lose them. So it has real consequences in the business. So we'll see how that plays out there too.
Yeah, and I don't want to derail you too much, Philip, but I think, you've used the term delegate, and that's something that's very important, and from our perspective at DNA Behavior, a very sort of take charge, influencing type leader will seek to delegate. They will want others to do the tasks because they're going to be the visionary, the charismatic person. But I would say also how you delegate is very, very important. And delegating isn't just saying to somebody, well, I want you to do A, B, C, D and get it done tomorrow, or come back to me in 2 weeks' time. There's got to be a lot of focus in the delegation so that, in a way, it's the right data in, right data out principle. The person's got to be properly briefed. And that all comes back to focus, I think, Philip.
Well, it comes back to focus, and it also has the abstract thinking here in the middle impacts it as well, because abstract thinking is like Einstein used to do. It's doing thought experiments. So it's thinking through in your mind what needs to happen, because if you don't do that preparation work when you're delegating, you don't give them the steps involved, identify the risks, the framework, etc. And most people I talk to, when I say, what do you like as a delegator, say, I get about half the quality I want, and it takes twice as long. And I have to explain that they're probably the reason for that most of the time, which is taken with a little bit sadly to yours point. And so we had an example of one executive, and they were really proud of their open door policy, talking about the focus and how it relates to delegating. I said, how's that work for you? And they said, I can't get anything done until the end of the day. So we work with them to put in guidelines for both the leader and the team so that everybody had focus time to work on things. But what he had a real epiphany was he'd get an idea in his head and walk out to Jill or Jim and get there and say, look, I need you to do this for me. And that was the extent of the delegation, because the thought popped in, straight out, tell them. Now, Jill or Jim's going, the boss has told me I need this. So they stop doing everything they're working on and jump into it. And the boss had never said, what are you working on? What are your priorities? Let me kind of see where this slots in. And it had the epiphany that is actually decreasing the productivity of his people.
Yeah.
Because he had an idea pop into his head doesn't mean he should defocus everybody else without context. So it comes across all over the place there, Hugh. So let's, unless there's anything else there, Hugh, let's move on to the next area.
Yeah, let's go. Yep.
So one of the things that both you and myself are seeing a lot of is that people are more and more stressed. There's more and more disruption and distractions going on in the brain. And whether that be with all the change going on, you've got the geopolitical situation, you've got external distractions of people interrupting you, but you've also got the internal distractions of daydreaming and not focusing during meetings, etc. So there's a whole lot of distraction going on. And some of you may have come across Alvin Toffler, and he wrote a great book called Future Shock, which is quite a few years old now, but he predicted a lot of what's going on. And when I show this to people, they look at the term shattering distress and disorientation. So if your people have got digital disruption, AI is coming along, how's that going to affect my job, etc.? How are people going to be working productively if their brain's operating under high stress? And I'll show you the impact of that on the brain. And the other quote I like about him is what's the 21st century is about those who need to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And that's the definition of what we call fluid thinking, which is the ability to solve problems or issues you've never faced before. So you can't just rely on your past experience. You have to create something that you've never done before. So let's have a look at what stress does to the brain here. So on the vertical axis, we've got the cognitive performance. And on the horizontal axis, we've got stress. And so if you're given something that you don't really want to do and doesn't really tax you or engage you, you're not going to be all that focused. So your cognitive performance is not going to be all that high. And then you get given something else to do. And that's a lot more interesting, and your cognitive capability comes up. And then if you're really interested in it, you're in that optimum level. And the stress here is measured by the adrenaline and cortisol. So you do need a certain amount of adrenaline and cortisol to be in the zone. But notice what happens where too many things, where you get given too many things, or there's too much change going on too quickly, or you're not giving the full thing, you start getting into this heightened anxiety. And there's more thoughts there than your brain can process, and your cognitive performance goes down. So what might have taken you 100 units of work to do, it's all of a sudden taking you 200 units of work to do. And then if it keeps on going that way, you get into basically cognitive overload. Now, mental breakdown is right at the end, but cognitive overload, and I'm sure everybody's experienced that the brain's just not working. It's like it's going in slow motion. So it's really important that people understand the impact of stress and manage their personal stress, but also make sure as a leader, you're giving people things to do and context to manage that stress. And what we also find anecdotally, Hugh, is a lot of people that go through our program find that instead of that being a sharp U at the top, it's a much flatter U, and it takes a lot more stress to tip them over the edge in cognitive performance, and they're more resilient. So stress is a really important factor here.
Yeah, and I think stress affects you cognitively, to quite a high degree, but also then it affects your eating, your general health, and your body.
Absolutely.
And then the impacts of it become even greater, in terms of your productivity and being able to do things, and then your general happiness factor as well, and fulfillment. Sorry,
here, go on.
Yeah, so the stress is, is something that's big if it's sustained stress, and I think that's something that we need to clarify. There's nothing wrong with being a little bit pressured for a few days or a couple of weeks to get some tasks done that are important, and there's light at the end of the tunnel, and you can have a bit of a break and recenter yourself, or go on holidays, or go back to a normal routine. That's okay. What we're talking about is months on end. I think is a problem. You're doing stuff that you don't enjoy. You're around people you don't enjoy. That's highly problematic.
Absolutely, yeah.
In all of this.
So we have one client where I could tell from their profile, and I said to them, look, you're running on adrenaline all day, every day, 5 days a week. And when the weekend comes, because your adrenaline's pumps in the fight or flight mode. So it's meant to happen for short periods of time and then back to normal. I said, so on the weekend, I imagine you go home and you just hibernate, because you need to regroup, get your energy back, and come in on Monday. And they said, how did you know? And I said, because I know the effect of the profile and the stress. I said, what you're not understanding is you're setting yourself up for what the World Health Organization is called the burnout syndrome. So as you say, if you have a week of that or a few days, you do that week after week after week, you reach the stage, and the most damning symptom is when you come back to work on Monday after you've rested on the weekend, you're still tired. So you are not going to be anywhere near your productivity. So I really counsel and encourage employers and leaders to lead by example, and getting the focused thinking up is a primary way of preventing that happening. And in a moment, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, Philip, we're dealing with a great workforce challenge right now. It doesn't matter whether you're in a large business or a smaller business, where, with technology coming in, with lots of different changes, changing environments, economies, you referred to some of the sort of the bigger political things as well that are there, but it's a difficult environment because people, particularly at the senior levels of an organization, need to be adaptable and be prepared to change on a dime. But at the same time, too much change, like was alluded to in the top quote before, can induce a lot of stress. And I think that's just to level set this. That's what we're dealing with here. Is there is a lot of change. People are going to have to handle it, or certain people in the organization will have to handle it. But we've got the stress factor to deal with. And as you say, Philip, the only way out is to be in a role that you're aligned to, and then to be focused.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up, because we can't control the amount of change that we're going to find in our lives. And as I say, with digital disruption and AI, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yep.
The only thing you can control is your brain's ability to adapt and do it quickly and effectively. That's why I say to leaders, your most important thing is improving your fluid thinking, because the rate of change is going to increase. It's not going to decrease. And the anecdote to that is getting the fluid thinking, the ability to adapt quickly and effectively up, so you can lead yourself, your team, and your organization through that ongoing disruption.
And in a way, we've mentally got to embrace the fact that it's going to happen. As you say, it's not a choice. It's going to be there. And you may as well get on board and do the best you can with it, and get focused, as it were, because it's going to happen. And if you fight it, that's going to be more stressful. Yeah,
and the thing I'm finding is that if nobody's we've ever tested has had the perfect brain profile, because again, it's the happy. Except for you, Hugh. Sorry, what was I thinking?
I worked hard to get to the top of the class. No, don't worry, I'm not there.
I'm sure you've got those gold stars up on the fridge that I sent you there, Hugh. So one of the things that can happen from that side of things is people with a lot of change going on, their only strategy is to work harder, because your brain, each of those 10 subconscious thinking habits is like a truck's speed limiter. It can only go as fast as your brain is wired at them. And so they try and work harder, and then they work longer hours, but their productivity goes down per hour. So you're down in a spiral. That's why I say to them, look, you have to get your subconscious thinking habits up higher so your brain can go faster and more effectively, because working harder when the rate of change is coming along is not enough. You absolutely have to work smarter and use different subconscious thinking habits that are happening under the radar, that aren't taking up a lot of that mental conscious energy when you do conscious thinking there. So that's a good point you brought out. Thanks there, Hugh. Now I'm going to give people an opportunity to see what their own focused thinking is like. So just to give a bit of context, we talk about the signal to noise ratio of the brain. So the signal is the priorities you have to stay focused on during the day, and the noise is all the interactions and disruptions from people saying, hey, Hugh, can I have 5 minutes? And your brain goes, sure. And an hour later you go, how did I just outsource my priority to an interruption from them? But now, with what we've done, to ask more questions and allocate when you're going to deal with that. But if it doesn't come to your conscious attention, you can't do that interruption then. So we'll have a little bit of fun. So the signal that I want people attending the webinar to look at is this six-sided figure here. I've highlighted it in red, and that's the signal. And like all business, some of it's clear, some of it's a bit distorted, some of it's not all clear. So we want to cover that. So what we want you to do is that in a moment, I'm going to bring up 5 boxes underneath here. And as it says, how many six-sided shapes do you see in the row below? Now, you'll have, it can be squashed, it can be elongated, it can be rotated, it can be bigger or smaller, so as long as it's got 6 sides. And so I'm going to give people 25 seconds to see how many they can count up, and if they could put the number they see in the chat room, and Leon can let us know. So you can start now. $20 seconds left. $15 seconds left. $10 seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So let me just go back a little here. Leon, what have we got in the chat room there?
Hey, Philip, we have answers of 1 and we have answer of 2.
Okay. So there's actually a few more than that, Leon. So let me do the reveal.
We have another one, 6. So before you reveal.
6. 6 is a good.
Anybody else? You want to vote? Put it in the Q&A. Okay, I think we're ready for the big reveal here, Philip.
Okay.
Oh, we've got another 5. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So it's good. We got a range, and that's what I want to see. Because this isn't about being right or wrong.
Yeah.
This is just you getting an understanding of what your focused thinking's like. So it's not a competition or anything like that. Sorry, Leon, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we recapped. We have 1, 2, 6, 5, and 8 as answers.
Right. Okay. So let's see where they are. So the first one is here on the inside. The second one is there, and as you see, a lot of the internal lines distract the brain. We've got 2 coming up here, 1 in the middle, 1 on the outside. And again, all of these other lines are distraction in this shape. This little triangle in the middle often causes a bit of an issue for people, but there's 1 there. And then we come home strong. So we've got 1 in the middle, 1 at the top, 1 at the bottom, and 1 on the outside there. So there's a couple of points that I want to make here. So 1 is, no matter what score you got, 90% of executives get low to moderate. But you've got a rough rule of thumb as to what the level of focused thinking is at. And in a moment, we'll talk about what impact that has. But a lot of this disruption is not just external distractions such as emails and phones and social media, etc., but it's also your internal thoughts when you start daydreaming or thinking about something else other than what you've got to focus on. And one of the key aspects that comes up out of this is the fact of trying to get people on the same page. So we were all looking at the same thing, very concrete at the same time. And we had answers ranging from, I think, 1 to 8. Now, imagine what happens when you as a leader start talking about an abstract concept.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's so difficult to get people on the same page. So as a leader, you have to keep on bringing people's focus back and checking where they're at and are we really on the same page, or do you just think we are? So that's basically what we wanted to pick up out of that area.
I think, Philip, you raised a very interesting point that, you're sitting in a meeting and let's say there's 10 of you around 8 to 10 of you around the meeting table, and you're talking about a concept that everybody's going to have different levels of attention span, focus, ability to grasp it. Someone's looking at their phone in the middle of the process, or they had an argument at home with their spouse or a child, or there's a money issue or whatever. There's lots of things that are driving that. But, I think what you've done is made it real for what is going on. And this is where, for a lot of our DNA clients, I've talked a lot in recent years about, the variability in decision making, the same decision maker making decisions about similar types of things, and you're getting very variable decisions because your focus is off. And
yes.
The concept that's called noise, and I think in a way you've brought it out in a very different way here for people to know what's going on. And I just wanted to make the point that something that you said to me when we were doing the training is, in a day you can really only have maybe 2 1.5 hour patches or segments of your day where you could be in high concentration mode.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but you can't sit there for 8 hours day in, day out with this level of focused thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We've only got, as humans, the best of us performing at our peak, have only got a limited amount of time where we can be really sharp. So we need to think about what we're doing in that period that we need to be sharp. But I'll let you clarify that, Philip, because I think,
Yeah, no, you're spot on there, Hugh. It's about an hour and a half. After that, the ability to remain focused, and that's why I say to people, what I really encourage people to do is put time in their diary when they're going to do that, and just let people know that's my thinking time.
Yeah.
So they can strategically lead the organization or the team or whatever it is, and unless something really is happening, schedule stuff outside that thinking time, and you'll be amazed at how once people do that, how much their productivity goes up, and the team members think, oh well, I'll do that thinking time as well. So you're actually setting the lead up to be able to do that, but put it in the diary and explain that it's sacrosanct, and that will certainly help the personal productivity.
Maybe I'm going to say, maybe Philip, I'll say to my boss, I'm going to work for an hour and a half a day, but I still want to get paid $1 million a year. But you're going to
good luck with that one, dude.
Hours out of me. I'm going to tell my boss that.
Sounds like a plan to me. Drop me a line and let me know how you go.
I will.
Okay, so we've given you experience of your own focused thinking, and at the end of this, I'll give you an opportunity to do a complementary test of your focused thinking so that you get a deeper level. But let's move on to this. So so what? Okay, so these are the symptoms of lower to moderate focused thinking. So again, what I'd like you to do is to have a look at these 1 through 10 and just write down the 3 that impact you the most or resonate with you the most or most like you. If you want to share it in the chat, go ahead. If you just want to do it as an exercise yourself, but have a look at those. So one of the ones that I spoke about, number 2, the procrastination, starting assignments later than ideal, and basically that's what happened with our colleague I was talking about before. We might make that an ideal rather than an idea for future there as well.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people say to themselves, I work better under pressure. It's BS, Hugh. What happens is they need the stress to come up to really get them focused. And as long as it's not overstressed, they can work better under that. And a lot of people are prone to work in the hero hours, as I was saying. And a lot of people relate to that situation. You're reading a book, you've read 10 pages, you thought you were paying attention, and you go, I recall nothing from what just happened there. So there's real impacts there. So Leon, when you're ready, if people are happy to share, just put down the numbers in there and we'll just see what comes up.
All right. So if anyone puts the number in the Q&A, and that is all confidential. We've got a couple things coming in here, Philip.
Mm-hmm.
We have answers to 2, 3, 6, and 9.
Yep. Yeah, and that number 6 is a really interesting one because, as I say to executives, be careful of that because you're outsourcing your priorities. And only you know what's a priority, but unless you know you're being distracted, that outsourcing is happening without you even being aware of it, and will drive you into working longer and harder. So thanks for that.
And we have another 1, 2, 3, 7, and 9.
Yeah, so we're seeing a bit of a pattern. The 3 and 9 seems to be coming up a bit. They're getting lost on the doing the research, and I love one person there that's put all 3, 1 to 10. Thank you for that. And
Yeah, we have a couple of those.
3 to 6.
All of them apply. To be honest, to be brutally honest.
I don't think anybody
that's good.
Can say that they don't do number 8. I mean,
thank you.
We all tune out in the meeting here and there.
Yeah, except for this webinar here.
Yes, except for today.
Except for this webinar. That's
so,
right.
Okay. All right. So again, we do the so what here. What does this actually cost an individual, a team, or an organization? So this was a report that was done in 2020, and it actually costs about $1.2 trillion globally. But let's break that down a level. So they found that this is the Economist magazine, and they found that there were 581 hours per person per year lost to distraction. Now, when I work that out, if we say person's working 10 hours a day, that means it's 58 days per year. And if we divide by 5 weeks, that's about 5 days per week. That's about 12 weeks a year. So imagine as a business owner or as a business leader, losing 12 weeks of productivity per person per year. And if you want to work out the numbers, it's about 34,000 per person per year. So if you've got 10 people in your team, that's about 340K. You've got 100 people in your team, we're talking 3.4 million. And it's not just the productivity loss, it's the opportunity cost of not being able to proactively use that time. So this is not, oh, that's a nice, interesting thing that Philip spoke about, focused thinking. This is affecting your business, your personal productivity, your business productivity, and your profits. So this is the sort of output that it has. So Hugh, just keep an eye on time. I might pick this up another time, but crystallized knowledge is what you're consciously aware of. It's your book smarts, and it's where you store your knowledge. And the fluid thinking is our street smarts, and it's future oriented. So how do you solve something, a new and novel problem you've never faced before? It's what you use when you don't know what to do. So you can't just leverage off that past experience. So it drives adaptability and agility, and also, as we were talking about, dealing with disruption and change. And as one colleague gave me the feedback, what's interesting is fluid thinking decreases with age as the brain ages. So we measure it at a point in time, and our job is to help a person redesign and redevelop and rewire their brain to give them an ideal brain to cope with all of the change. And the colleague sent this cartoon along to me, says, well, what about business as usual? So if you look at the chart to the right there, you can see sales are going down, and I love people being optimistic. What if we don't change at all and something magical just happens? But I much prefer optimism with focus and strategy and planning and delegation. And then the process that we go through here, is you're aware, we do the test. So we want to look at, this gives us the personal manual of the person's existing brain, and we use it to design and tailor a program to meet their specific needs. And then the development happens through a thing called deliberate practice. And to give you an example of deliberate practice, it's what happens when you learn how to drive a car. So most people have come across that saying, neurons that fire together wire together, and this is what we do. So if you think about when a person learns to drive a car, everything's in the conscious mind and they go into cognitive overload. There's too much information there. So they get a professional driving instructor who gives them an hour's lesson and says, I just want you to work on this. And then over the next week, they go out 3 or 4 times in the car with family and friends. And that's where the real rewiring starts happening in redevelopment. And then that happens over a period of time. And what was all happening in the conscious mind has now become a subconscious habit. So one day the driver is driving along, they're talking to their friends, hopefully once they got the license. They're driving along, talking to their friends, looking at the view, listening to the radio, and they've driven 10 miles and they're having a lovely time. And they all of a sudden go, who's driving the car though? That's your subconscious brain. You still need your conscious brain to be seeing what's happening. But that's the same way that we do it with increasing focused thinking. We do harder and harder tasks on focused thinking, and they practice it, and then it becomes a strengthened neural pathway, and they can be much more so that their brain's controlling their attention rather than their attention controlling the brain. So that deliberate practice is the way we rewire the brain, and we do the design and development based on the person's profile. And Hugh, just to sort of wrap up, I mentioned to you that this new book has just come out with an updated edition. So as the book says, your brain's your biggest asset. And what I hopefully have got across today with the discussion with you is your success depends on your brain. But like most people, they really don't know how it works or how to improve it. So the book will give you that background in terms of what we've been talking about today. So as I mentioned to you, I'm happy to provide a 30% discount on this. So either look on the QR code or use the URL. And for those, and I encourage you, if you have got about 10 minutes at the end of this, the full assessment does the 10 focused thinking tools, but this one just gives you a chance to test just your focused thinking capability. So do that, and it only takes about 10 minutes. Very importantly, remember to put the code of DNA when and hit the apply button at the checkout so that you're not charged for it. And if anybody wants to reach out or contact me, here's my contact details there. So, Hugh, I think that probably brings us to the wrap-up stage there.
Yeah, thank you, Philip. I think this is, this has been fantastic for, for our listeners today, and for those that we're going to, send the links out to as well who couldn't make it. I really would encourage you guys to get the book and to understand this more, and to go through the focused thinking assessment, the exercise, and see where you're at, and that'll help level set you and put you in a place to rise further. And I'd encourage you to also, if you want coaching on it, to go deeper and to strengthen your performance, then reach out to Philip and get the coaching. And I think, to put this in perspective with, what we do at DNA Behavior, as far as the workplace is concerned and leadership, around work talents, we're hoping to get you aligned to the right role based on what your talents are, to capitalize on your strengths, minimize your struggles, communicate better. But that all works in sync with what Philip is talking about in terms of then, when you are in the right role for who you are, your talents and your passions, working in your X factor, then get a lot more focused. And I encourage all of you to take that step with Philip.
Thanks, Hugh. And just a summary there, when you think that you're distracted, most people are distracted nearly 30% of the time. Imagine if you only got half of that back. You are still a long way ahead of the game. But more importantly, if you can manage your own focus, you'll become a much better leader and get much more leverage out of your team, and you'll be able to spend more time developing, mentoring them, and also guiding them through the stress associated with the ongoing disruption.
Yeah, 581 hours is a lot of hours when
it is, isn't it?
25% of the year, and I think that's something we've all got to think about a lot more. So thank you, Philip, for getting out of bed early and giving us a wonderful session today, and I hope everybody takes you up on the offers that you've made.
Okay, thanks, Hugh. It's been my pleasure.
All right.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Hugh. We will send out this recording and the slides for everyone. So thank you for joining, and anyone that didn't attend will get the recording as well with the slides. So thank you, Philip. Thank you for getting up early this morning and sharing your knowledge with us this morning.
You're most welcome, Leon. Thank you.